أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله بارئ الخلائق الأجمعين باعث الأنبياء والمرسلين ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء حبيب قلوبنا وشفيع ذنوبنا أبي القاسم محمد اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد ثم الصلاة والسلام على أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين لا سيما ولي الله الحجة ابن الحسن صاحب الأمر والزمان اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد روحي وأرواح العالمين له الفداء ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين إلى قيام يوم الدين آمين رب العالمين. أما بعد، قال مولانا إمام أبو الحسن موسى بن جعفر الكاظم صلوات الله وسلامه عليه: إن فاطمة صديقة شهيدة صدق الإمام وآمنا به. زينوا مجالسكم بذكر محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. أحبائي، باعتبار today is مجلس الاختتام, the final majlis, inshallah not the final majlis of our lives, but the final majlis for this season or this year commemorating the third Fatemiyah. As a matter of akhlaq, I'd like to thank each and every one of you who have taken out time from your busy schedules, tomorrow being work day, school day, 1,001 things that you could be doing on a weekend, but you sacrifice everything that you have to come and honor the majalis of Sayyidah Fatimah al-Zahra. For Insha'Allah, with your presence in these majalis, you will see the barakah of Sayyidati Nisa'il Alameen in your lives, Insha'Allah, in all your endeavors, in your school, in your universities, in your work. We have a hadith sharif that I wanted to mention yesterday, we didn't get the chance, in regards to the benefits of this majalis, this farsh that you sit on, this majlis that has the name Sayyidati Nisa'il Alameen. What is the value of these majalis that you all attend? Hadith Sharif, where Salman al-Muhammadi narrates on behalf of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad, where he says, Hubbu Fatima tanfa' fi meet mawatin, or fi mi'ata mawtinin. There is at least 100 crucial times in your existence. 100 crucial times in your existence where the love of Fatima will benefit you. He goes on to say, wa aysaruha maut. The most or the least difficult part of this exam that you will go through is death. Ajib. Death is an advent that is bound to happen. Hatman. Nobody will escape death. Nobody can escape death. No one from the beginning of time has ever escaped that. It is a reality. But it is a time which is also very sensitive, when the ruh is being separated from the body. Aslan, this is the meaning of death. Just now our souls, our ruh is encompassed within our body. Death is this process of the extraction of the ruh from the body. And at this crucial time, hadith say it could be a very painful incident. It could be painful because of the sins a person has committed during his life. It could be painful because his allegiance towards Ahlul Bayt was not right. It's a very scary moment because now you are entering into a realm of existence where you are no more contained inside your body. You are now moving towards a realm of reality where there is hisab and kitab. The ruh and the soul is devastated with fear. Rasulullah says, at that crucial time, your love of Fatima will help you. Your love of Fatima will make this process of death a process so pleasant, just like the one who smells the rose in a garden that has a sweet scent as he transfers from one realm of existence to another. The love of Fatima on the day of judgment, the love of Fatima in the dunya. Through Fatima alayha salam, hajat are accepted and the doors of success are opened. فَعَنِيًا لَكُمْ insha'Allah, all of you who have attended the majlis, those who stand outside and serve the tea and the fatiha and the tabarruk, and the ones who spent time preparing the tabarruk and contributing towards this, these are all values and these are all a'mal that do not go unnoticed by Ahlul Bayt. This is our tradition, this is our legacy, this is our identity. And you have younger people standing at the table, serving the tabarruk, so on and so forth, ensuring that everyone who comes to the majlis of Fatima is somehow given some type of respect and honor. This is our identity, this is our culture that we need to pass from generation to generation and nurture this love and service for Sayyidah Zahra. It is through her majalis, as we said, hajat are accepted. And those who are with illnesses and those who are with sickness, it is through these majalis that people find cure. So I would like to ask you to join me. We raised our hands insha'Allah and we pray to Allah Azza wa Jal by the sake of Sayyidat Nisa'il Alameen, that for all those mu'mineen and mu'minat who are not in the best of health, are in need of cure and Shifa'a, Ya Allah, bihaqqi Sayyidati Nisa'il Alameen, do not let any one of the mu'mineen and mu'minat return except that you have fulfilled their hajat and except that you have cured them from every type of sickness, illness, and prevent them, protect them from every type of su' and bala. All of this by reciting 5 times ayat al-shifa'a. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. عما يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء عما يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء عما يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء عما يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء. يا الله يا الله يا الله يا الله يا الله. By the sake of Sayyidah Fatimah al-Zahra, Allahumma ajil li waliyina al-faraj. Ya Allah, forgive us our sins on a night like this, bihaqq Zahra. By the sake of Zahra, fulfill the hajat of the mu'mineen and mu'minat who are attending these majalis and following them from wherever they are in the world. Ya Allah, mu'mineen and mu'minat who are not in the best of health, you grant them shafa'ah. By the sake of Sayyidah Fatimah al-Zahra, marhumin and marhumat who have passed away, you make their graves into a garden from the gardens of Jannah. إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد. أحبائي, the Khutba Fadakiya that was delivered by Sayyidati Nisa'il Alameen is indeed one of the greatest sermons you will find to be ever delivered in the history of mankind. This Khutba Fadakiya which Sayyidah Zahra delivered in Masjid al-Nabawi is an entire summary of the efforts of Rasulullah and the Nabuwah over 23 years. If you want to understand the trials and the tribulations, the goals and the values which Rasulullah tried to spread and implement over these 23 years of Risala, the summary of this entire juhd is in the Khutba Fadakiya of Sayyidat Nisa'il Alameen. On the other hand, Inta mu'min muwali, you are in a state of intidhar, waiting for the reappearance of the awaited master, the one who wants to be a part of the movement of Imam al-Hujjah. This Imam, the entire goal and the entire foundation of his revolution is found within the Khutba Fadakiya. If a person is not familiar with the teachings and the ma'ani, the ma'arif inside of Khutba Fadakiya, then it is very difficult for him to register himself as somebody who will be within that army of the Imam, because the vision and the goals of the revolution of the Imam we ourselves are not familiar with. Imam says Khutba Fadakiya. How? Within the Tawqi' al-Sharif, a handwritten statement that emanates from the 12th Imam, he says, وَإِنَّ فِي وَفِي إِبْنَةِ رَسُولِ اللَّهِ لِي أُسْوَةٌ حَسَنَةٌ. Indeed, within the daughter of Rasulullah, yani his grandmother Sayyidat Nisa'il Alameen, Sayyidah Fatimah, Imam al-Hujjah says that she is the best of role models for me. Shlon how Allah Azza wa Jal says in the Quran, لَقَدْ كَانَ لَكُمْ فِي رَسُولِ اللَّهِ أُسْوَةٌ حَسَنَةٌ. Indeed, the best of mankind for you is Rasulullah. And Fatima, Bada'atun Nabi. Fatima is a part, she's a soul of the Holy Prophet. So Imam al-Hujjah points towards this reality and he says, Fatima alayha salam is my role model. Ajib. This man who is universally awaited for, this man, this savior who has been, his prophecy has been foretold in the Tawrat and in the Injil and in the Zabur and in the Quran. This person who Rasulullah says, يَمْلَأُ الْأَرْضَ عَدْلًا وَقِسْطًا كَمَا مُلِئَتْ ظُلْمًا وَجَوْرًا. The one man who will single-handedly be responsible for eliminating oppression from the face of the earth. This one individual who will single-handedly establish global peace says, my role model is Fatima. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. My role model is a woman named Fatima. Ajib, how we ourselves don't understand the importance of Sayyidat Nisa'il Alameen. Or when you come and you have arguments that are put forward, Islam doesn't respect women. Baba, the person who is going to make the dunya a Jannah on earth, his role model is a woman. Sayyidat Nisa'il Alameen. Bain al-Qawsayn, between brackets real quick. Understanding women's rights is absolutely important for us through the teachings of Ahlul Bayt. Because the establisher of peace and justice, his role model is this woman. And when I say woman, I mean just for the means of the physical sense. Otherwise, la, Sayyidah Fatimah al-Zahra in Huriya al-Insiyya. She is a Hur al-Ain and an Ins, a one whose aslan, reality and essence is beyond the comprehension of man. But this issue of women's rights, you look forward and you see what the world has come with when it comes to propagating the understanding of women's rights and the different type of elements that have broken out in terms of feminist movements and so on and so forth. And you find a lot of Muslim women get caught up within this mawj and this wave and this tide of ideas that are coming. Ahibai, research the definition of feminism and the definition of women's rights through the teachings of Sayyidat Nisa'il Alameen. This elevated master woman in Jannah. For you find Rasulullah says she is my role model. For every one of us, and I say this to myself before I say this to you, that if I feel or you want to feel that you are a part of the movement of the 12th Imam, you want to play a role when the dhuhur of the Imam happens, you must believe in the vision that the Imam wants to spread. And to believe in that vision means for you to believe and to understand what's within the Khutba Fadakiya delivered by Sayyidah Zahra. Alhamdulillah wa shukr, on the internet we have translations of the Khutba Fadakiya in multiple languages. Person takes time to read and to understand. You find within Khutba Fadakiya, Sayyidat Nisa'il Alameen in one part describes the falsafa, describes the philosophy behind a lot of the ahkam that are ordained upon us within Islam. By way of example, Sariya, this is not the part of the lecture, but very quick by way of ishara. She states in one part of her khutbah fadakiya, وَجَعَلَ اللَّهُ الْإِيمَانَ تَطْهِيرًا لَكُمْ عَنِ الشِّرْكِ وَالصَّلَاةَ تَنْزِيحًا لَكُمْ مِنَ الْكِبْرِ. Why has Allah made salat wajib on us? Why is it that Allah has made salat 5 times, the 5 salat? Why has He made it wajib upon us? For what reason? When we pray salat, what sort of impact has salat, what sort of impact should salat have on us in terms of our character? Sayyidah Fatimah al-Zahra gives the answer in Khutbat al-Fadak, where she says, Allah has ordained upon you salat such that it may purify you from kibr. Kibr, takabbur, arrogance, ajib. Salat purifies you from arrogance. Now, what is the connection between takabbur and salat? This one is a bahath. It's spoken about it not too far from here in Hal in the second Fatemiyah in quite a lot of detail. But ala kullin, if a person wants to know, is my salat accepted or not? 15, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years of my life I've been reciting salat. How do I know is my salat accepted or not? Sayyidah Zahra points out the secret in the khutbah. If you have arrogance within your personality, arrogance within your character, no, there is a flaw in your mistake. There's a flaw in your salat. There's a mistake somewhere in your salat. Either in concentration or in ahkam. I'm just understanding salat. Do you know the connection between salat and takabbur? This connection between salat and takabbur is summarized within the sajda. And you find the answers for these only in the madrasa of Ahlul Bayt. You will find the answers for this in the madrasa of Amirul Mu'mineen. You research the East and the West and you look at all of the people who have claimed themselves to be khulafa and divine people. Nobody has answers to these except Ahlul Bayt. Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayh was asked about the ta'wil of salat and the ta'wil of the sajda, and he was asked, why is it that Allah has placed for us 2 sujood? Why should we do 2 sajdas in every rak'ah? For what reason? Amir al-Mu'mineen says to him, when you place your head on the turba in sajda, the first sajda when you place your forehead on the dust, this is to remind you, Ya Bani Adam, this is your asal. This is what you have been created from. You have been created from turab, from dust. And when you raise your head back up from, from sujood, this is supposed to symbolize that your life, you have been created, you have come up. This earth in which you live is as a result of you having been raised from the dust. And when you go back into sajda for the second time, the second sajda is supposed to remind you that like the way you have been created from this dust, you are going back into this earth and dust. Ba'ad, after the second sajda, you put your head up, you sit back, you have a pause of a second or two, and then you say, Bihawlillahi wa quwwatihi akumu wa ak'ud. Sahih lola. The small pause that you have when you sit up after the second sajda, it also represents something. Just like the way you enter back into the grave, you will be raised back from the grave. So from the time you finish your second sajda to the time that you stand up for your next rak'ah or begin your tashahud, that split second is supposed to remind you Yawmul Qiyamah. This is salat with ma'rifah. So I ask myself every time I go into sajda, do I remind myself before I start this dhikr, Subhana Rabbiyal A'la wa bihamdih? Take a second or two, take a deep breath and remind yourself, Baba, you are created from dust. You are going back to dust. If this is the reality, then what reason do I have to be arrogant in my life? When a person recites salat with this type of understanding, it has an impact on his character. And then waking up then praying salat on time, not praying salat becomes a secondary issue. You have shawq towards salat. So you see, Sayyidat Nisa al-Alameen comes and she puts these ma'ani inside her khutbah Fadakiya. For the hadith mentioned, the historians mentioned that when Fadak was seized from her, she was getting ready to go into the masjid. The historians mention that she wore her hijab, and the hijab of Sayyidat Nisa al-Alameen, historians mention the number of layers and so on and so forth. She covered her entire body, she covered her entire self in a hijab. And the historians mention she walked out from her house towards Masjid al-Nabawi. The walk of Sayyidah Fatimah al-Zahra was similar to the walk of Rasulullah in the way that she would place one foot and walk over the other foot. And her hijab was so long that it was dragging on the earth in front of her and behind her. And she was surrounded by a women from Bani Hashim. And as soon as she entered into Masjid al-Nabawi, she asked for a hijab, for a cloth to be placed between her and between the men of the Ansar and the Muhajirin. And once that barrier was placed, she sat behind the hijab, and the khutbah or the historians mentioned that she sighed the sigh of grief. The pain in the sigh of Sayyidah Fatimah al-Zahra was such that the entire majlis began to weep for Sayyidah Fatimah al-Zahra. You can imagine the pain in this sigh, such that the entire mosque began to weep. Those who couldn't see her from behind the hijab from the Ansar and the Muhajirin began to weep. And then she began by praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And having praised Allah Azza wa Jal, there is one part of her khutbah that she says, which we want to analyze very briefly for today. For having sent praise and thanking Allah Azza wa Jal for His bounties, she says, وَأَشْهَدُ أَن لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا اللَّهُ وَحْدَهُ لَا شَرِيكَ لَهُ كَلِمَةٌ جَعَلَ الْإِخْلَاصَ تَعْوِيلُهَا. She says, I bear witness. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika la. I bear witness that there is no God but Allah. And this statement, the ta'wil of this statement, the manifestation of uttering this statement is that there is ikhlas. Ajib. This is what we want to analyze today. Sayyidah Fatimah al-Zahra says, the uttering of the Shahada, La ilaha, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika la. This is a verbal recitation of accepting the oneness of Allah. It is the verbal attestation of Tawheed. Sayyidah Zahra says, alayha salam, that the verbal attestation of Tawheed, the true meaning of this Tawheed, is reflected in your actions if your actions will have ikhlas. So there is a rabita and there is a connection between this particular sentence, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, and the ikhlas in my amal. How? What is the rabita between these two? As we get to this, we have a number of muqaddimat. From the first muqaddimat, understanding the weight of this statement, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. And this is an important thing for us to understand. Baba, the entire kalima is first basis, the first foundation of the kalima is what? La ilaha illallah. What separates me from a mushrik or what separates me from a kafir? La ilaha illallah. Hence this word la ilaha illallah differentiates you between Muslim and non-Muslim. So I have to ask myself, what does this word, what does this statement la ilaha illallah mean? Have I as a Muslim, have I as a Shia, for the time that I've lived on this earth, even understood the reality of the word la ilaha illallah? Or no? It's important for us. This is teachings and barakah and ma'arif from the madrasa of Sayyidah Zahra. First, you begin to understand the weight of the Shahada through hadith that talk about the thawab. We have hadith al-sharif in Thawabul A'mal by Sheikh Saduq rahmatullah alayh, where he states, hadith on behalf of the Holy Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam, where he says, man qala ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lah mahat anhu kull sayyi'atih. The one who utters ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lah, mujarrad, just by simply uttering this phrase, I bear witness that there is no God but Allah, the one and for whom there is no partner. The thawab for this is that your entire sins are forgiven. Ajib. Attesting to the oneness of Allah in itself is a form of istighfar. Number two, the hadith goes on and says, not only are your sins forgiven, but what has been removed in terms of your sin by the same amount, hasanat and thawab, is added to your scrolls. For thawab this great is given for reciting a statement that is as simple as Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. What is contained within this statement, La ilaha illallah, such that if a person does it with ma'rifah, he gets this type and this great of a magnitude of thawab. Number of points. Number one, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. And this is something that we recite even in our salat, in our tashahud. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, yani I bear witness that there is no God but Allah. The first thing to contemplate upon is Shahada. Ashhadu. Why is it that we say I bear witness that there is no God but Allah? This word Ashhadu, the Shahada, is something very important. You didn't say in your tashahud, I know there is no God except Allah. We didn't say I know. We didn't say I have ilm. We didn't say I have ma'rifah. We said Ashhadu, I bear witness. And in the same way we say this for Imam al-Hussein in the ziyarat of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. Ashhadu annaka kad akamta as-salat wa atayta az-zakat wa amarta bil ma'ruf wa nahayta 'anil munkar hatta ataka al-yaqin. Ashhadu, I bear witness. What does it mean that I bear witness? When you come and you look at the word Shahada, Ashhadu, grammatically it means yani hudur. You were present and you saw. Ajib. How can you say that I see that there is no God but Allah? Can you say that? You can't see Allah Azza wa Jal. So what is meant with when I say I see or Shahada, I bear witness. You can only bear witness. You can only bear testimony when you have witnessed an event. Sahih Lola, even if you see within the procedure of a court, when witnesses are brought and they say, I testify that Fulan is innocent, or I testify Fulan is guilty, meaning what? He was there and he saw. What is meant is when he says, I bear witness, I have absolute conviction. When you say, I bear witness, yani your conviction is not through the sight of the eyes, but your conviction is through the sight of your heart. Yani this concept in the oneness of Allah, the concept of Tawheed is so firmly believed by you. It is a belief that is so deeply attached and so tightly tied within you, that you are convinced that nothing other than this is the reality. This is conviction at its highest level. This is why a person once came and asked Amir al-Mu'mineen, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, have you seen Allah? Amir al-Mu'mineen said to him, oh man, do you think I would worship a God that I have not seen? Ajib. The person said, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, and how does our God look? Amir al-Mu'mineen said to him, Wayhak, he said, woe be upon you. I didn't mean that I've seen him with my eye, because he is greater than to be comprehended or greater than to be restricted by the human eye. But I have seen him through the eyes of my heart, through my certainty, by pondering over creation. 100% guarantee, above 100% conviction that there cannot be any other Lord except Allah. Do you and I have this conviction? I should ask myself, do I have this absolute conviction? What is my proof that Allah is one? Leave about convincing others. Can I truly convince myself? Many times, a person falls into this, I wouldn't say trap, but he falls into these phases. I am born into the religion. My father or my mother has been telling me since I was young, Allah is one. The teachers in the madrasa have been saying Allah is one. The whole community says Allah is one. The whole Husayniyah says Allah is one. Yalla, Allah is one. Mashil hal. We didn't really think about it. But if I was to contemplate over the reality, am I truly convinced? Do I have proof where I'm absolutely convinced God is one? Where do I get this yaqeen from? Where do I get this conviction from? Ahibai. Which is why Rasulullah says, Talabul ilm faridatun ala kulli muslimin wa muslima. Seeking ilm, seeking knowledge is wajib upon every believing man and woman. He didn't point out any gender. He didn't give any sort of free pass to another gender. No exemptions based on age. No exemptions based on gender. Seeking knowledge is wajib, particularly when it comes to usuluddin. Hibai. And studying usuluddin from the right sources. You have Kitab Haqqul Yaqeen. Haqqul Yaqeen, which is authored by Allama Majlisi, rahmatullah alayh, translated in English language. Look up Kitab Haqqul Yaqeen. Study Kitab Haqqul Yaqeen. Inside of this you have the entire usuluddin. Tawheed, Nabuwa, Imama, Qiyama, or Tawheed, Adalat, Nabuwat, Imamat and Ma'ad. And within the chapter of Tawheed, you have all the arguments to prove how does one God exist? Does he exist? And if he exists, is he one? And if he is one, what are his sifat? And so on and so forth when it comes to Nabuwa, Imama and Qiyama. And the same thing with Kitab al-Tawheed. Kitab al-Tawheed, which is authored by Sheikh Saduq, rahmatullah alayh. Kitab Tawheed, the book of Tawheed, this is translated in English as well, is an entire book where the author has compiled hadith from all the different imams, particularly Imam Baqir and Imam Sadiq, compiled all the hadith that talk about Allah Azza wa Jal and has placed it for the people. Can you find, if you are going to learn about this one Allah and you are going to pay allegiance, yani you bear witness and testimony that you believe in one Allah, what better avenue to learn about Allah than from the Imams? Hadith, sifat of Allah Azza wa Jal, and so on and so forth. It becomes important. And you find that the A'imma paid great attention to this. You find during the time once of Imam Ja'far ibn Muhammad as-Sadiq salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayh. This hadith can be found in Kitab al-Kafi, Sheikh al-Kulayni rahmatullah alayh, where there's a conversation or there's an argument, there's a debate that happens with this very one famous atheist by the name of Abdullah Daysani. Abdullah ad-Daysani was a well-known atheist. And when we say atheist, it doesn't mean that he was some uneducated, uncultured, waste man sitting on the side of the road with nothing to do in his life. No, he was a thinker. This guy was a thinker. He had given proper, I'm using the language, the shabab, or even, you understand where I'm coming from. La basbi. He was a thinker. He was a well-respected thinker with contributions, and he has come forward with, you see, many times we think that these people who are atheists, these are the guys who are the losers in life who have nothing else to do. Baba, games changed. The ones who claim that Allah doesn't exist are the ones who are the cream of the cream when it comes to educational institutions. Thinkers, philosophers, so on and so forth, people who contribute towards mankind and humanity and global politics and sociology and so on and so forth. This is the game. This is the world in which we live. Daysani was like this. He was a thinker, he was a scholar, he was a philosopher, respected by people, but an atheist. Didn't believe in the existence of Allah. And he would come for Hajj, or he would look for the Muslims, and he would look for them, and he would engage them into arguments, and he would defeat them in arguments to a great extent. Once a Daysani came for Hajj, and he got a hold of Hisham ibn Hakam. Hisham ibn Hakam was one of the companions of Imam as-Sadiq and one of the most revered companions of Imam as-Sadiq. He was a battle warrior when it came to Usuluddin. He could argue and debate with anyone all day long about Imamate, and he was unbeaten, undefeatable in his arguments. Not that he was violent, not that he was rude. His eloquence and his logic when it came to debating and convincing other people about the path of truth, khasatan when it came to Imamate. For Hisham ibn Hakam, he was a lad as well. He was not that old in his life. Young person he was. For once, Abdullah Daysani, this atheist, sees Hisham ibn Hakam and he catches him. He drags him into a debate. He says to Hisham ibn Hakam, is your Lord all powerful? The way we say, Innahu ala kulli shay'in qadir. He has power over everything. Abdullah Daysani asks Hisham ibn Hakam, is your Lord all powerful, qadir? Hisham said, of course. How can we worship somebody who's not all powerful? He says, can your Lord do anything that he wants? He said, of course. So he says to Hisham, Hisham, tell me, can your Lord fit this entire dunya into an egg without shrinking the dunya to fit into the egg and without expanding the size of the egg in order for it to fit in the dunya? Hisham thought about this. Ajib. If I say yes, he might tell me proof, show me an example, give me proof. And if I say no, this means I have negated and I have contradicted myself. So how do we give the jawab? Hisham says to him, look, there is even humbleness. There are so many lessons that you extract from hadith. Sometimes when a person doesn't know the answer, instead of making up an answer, instead of blagging it, instead of lying and, making something on the spot, humbleness. When a person doesn't know, he doesn't know. And there is no shame in saying, I don't know. Hisham said to him, give me time to ponder over the answer and I'll get back to you. Daysani said to him, I give you 1 year. Next year, Hajj, inshallah, we reconvene. Straight away, Hisham went to Imam Sadiq. This is a lesson. Enter when you have a challenge in your life in regards to your usuluddin. Don't go to fulan and fulan and fulan. Go straight to the words of your imam. Go to the works that have been left behind of our scholars from the imams. See what imam has to say about this issue, that issue, fulan, kada, kada. Straight away Hisham ibn Hakam goes to Imam Sadiq. He says to Imam Sadiq, I'm at Daysani, and this was the ishkal that he put forward to me. How should I answer? Imam Sadiq said, simple. He didn't say simple, I'm paraphrasing. Simple. How? Imam Sadiq asked Hisham, he says to him, how many senses do you have? He says, I have 5 senses. He says, what are these 5 senses? He says, I've got the faculty, I can see, I can smell, I can taste, I can hear, and I can touch. Imam Sadiq says, what about the faculty of sight? He says, what about it? He says, what can you see through your eyes? So Hisham looked around. He said, I can see big trees, and I can see the mountains, and I can see your house, and I can see the palace of, fulan and fulan that's over there. I can see all these things. Imam Sadiq said to him, Subhanallah, how big is your eye through which you see all these objects? He said, it's not bigger than a couple of seeds of the lentil. Imam Sadiq alayhi salam says to Hisham, O Hisham, tell Daysani, this Lord who is able to allow you to capture massive images like the images of mountains and buildings through your pupil, which is this small. If you can capture images that big through a lens that are this small, that same Lord has the capability to fit the entire universe in an egg or an egg outside of that universe. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Inshallah, when you read the hadith, you find the beautiful manner in which the entire event happens. And sarahatan, this should actually prompt you to go and research of how the human eye actually works and the mechanics behind how the light is refracted through the pupil and the cornea and everything else, and up to how the electric pulses are sent to the brain and an actual image is formed in your mind through the light that comes in through the eyes. And when you look into all this, you see that your human body it's not just come by chance. It just didn't happen accidentally. You just didn't happen to evolve from a monkey by chance into this perfect human being with a perfect system inside of you. And it is important when it comes to usuluddin. I heard one of the shabab yesterday or the night before talking about Muhibban al-Mahdi Quran classes. Inshallah, within Quran classes, you also have classes of usuluddin. We live at a time where the educational system is bent upon pushing atheistic agendas. In this day and age, I need to convince myself God is one, which is why when you look through the hadith, Imams, they use the example of the sun and the moon. And this is all well said in theory and listening to it in a majlis. But the real impact happens when you contemplate upon this in the darkness of the night. And one of these cold winter nights, sit alone in the darkness and look out your window and look at that moon and think about the creation of that moon. Read a little about the solar system and gaze into the stars to ponder about what you have read. This is the time when that yaqeen begins to settle in your heart, which is why Rasulullah says 1 hour worth of contemplation is equivalent to 70 years of ibadah. This conviction needs to be there, that there is no God but Allah. This one Allah who is all powerful. Everything in your life and your destiny and your death is in His control. Once you were fully convinced about this, you have closed the door to a lack of ikhlas straight away. Ikhlas means sincerity. The opposite of ikhlas is what? Riya, to show off. You find people do tons of good work, but they don't have an iota of ikhlas in front of them. They do a lot of good work, be it religious or non-religious, but it is only for fame. It is only to gain credit. It is only so that other people in the community can acknowledge them. They lack ikhlas, which means, according to the khutbah of Sayyidah Fatimah al-Zahra, the one who lacks ikhlas in reality didn't even understand the Shahada La ilaha illallah. Because she says, La ilaha illallah, ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika la, kalima ja'ala al-ikhlas, kalimatun ja'ala al-ikhlas ta'wiluha. The ta'wil of ikhlas, the hidden meaning of the shahada is ikhlas. Meaning if there is no ikhlas, you didn't understand the shahada. This is the value of ilm. See, lack of ikhlas, when you do things to show off, to gain acceptance from others, to gain acknowledgement from others. Actually, this is a person who didn't understand that everything is in the hands of Allah. The power of reward and punishment is from Allah. The important thing is that Allah accepts. If the dunya didn't accept you, فَالدُّنْيَا إِلَى الْجَهَنَّمِ. As long as Allah is happy with you. This is what counts. Because even if the entire dunya is happy with you, if Allah is not happy with you, no one can bail you out from Nar Jahannam. And the proof is not far. Go to the graveyard. Go to the graveyard. Has anybody taken a partner with them inside their grave? Has anyone taken their best friend with them inside their grave? Abadan la. The last thing you will do is throw dust on that person. But intend Allah to have yaqeen in this. A person doesn't become needy of other people's approval. He's not needy of other people's acceptance. And hada tara, it's an issue to do with mental health. When a person has inferiority complex within him, when she has inferiority complex within her, she's constantly or he is constantly in need of approval from other people. This is because there is a lack of understanding. I don't need approval from the creation. I need approval from the Creator. I don't need to be in good standing with the creation. I need to be in good standing with the Creator. This is when it comes to issues of haq and batil, haram and halal. Sayyidat Nisa al-Alameen says, the Shahada La ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika la is the sign the one who has understood it has ikhlas. And ba'ad this tawheed, reciting Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika la, tawheed, what are the boundaries of tawheed? Kitab Uyun al-Akhbar, Uyun Akhbar Imam Rida, which is also book entitled Uyun al-Akhbar. It contains the narrations of Imam Rida alayhi salam, translated also in English. Over there we have one tradition when the Imam was leading or when the Imam was traveling, and this has to do at the time when he was in Nishapur. The Imam was leaving and the people asked Imam Rida, Imam Ali ibn Musa Rida, they asked him, Ruhi lahul fida, they asked him, Yabna Rasulullah, before you embark on your journey, give us words of advice, give us nasiha, give us a hadith from which we can benefit. The Imam says to them, Al-Qawl or Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah hisni, man dakhala hisni amina min adhabi. Allah Azza wa Jal has said, the one who says and the one who believes in La ilaha illallah has entered into the fort of Allah. The one who enters into the fort of Allah is protected from the adhab and the punishment of Jahannam. He goes on to say, وَشَرْتِهَا بِشُرُوطِهَا. This kalimat tawheed, this statement of tawheed, la ilaha illallah, has conditions attached to it. Ajib. What are these conditions? Imam Rida moves a few steps forward and then he says, wa ana min shurutiha. I am one of the conditions of Tawheed, meaning that your belief in the 12 divine Imams is an essential part of validating your Tawheed. There is Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. There is no meaning in Tawheed if that Tawheed is not accompanied with belief in the 12 Imams from Ali Muhammad. These are the words of Imam Rida alayhi salam. This is why you find one of the greatest attacks on Shiaism has always been to separate the concept of Tawheed from the concept of Imamah. Because these two concepts come together through what? Through wasila. And the attack on the madhab is on the attack on wasila. It is shirk and it is kufr. Baba, to not believe in wasila is shirk. To not call out by the name of Amir al-Mu'mineen is shirk. Because you are going against that one wasila who the Lord of the universe has appointed as a wasila. This is a reality. فَأَنْتُمْ أَحِبَّائِ. When we ponder in these deep words and ramifications from within the khutbah of Sayyidat Nisa'il Alameen, message for tonight is a message of seeking ilm, particularly when it comes to usuluddin. Discussion circles, WhatsApp groups that you may create between yourselves, as long as it is based on ilm, khasatan these two books, Haqqul Yaqeen and Kitab al-Tawheed, which has the hadith from our Imams. And inshallah, tawfiq is for all of us with the barakat of as-salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Kalam tawil ahibai, and I think I've even crossed my time. Masa'ib, majlis ikhtitam ahibai. All the masa'ib on Ahlul Bayt began with the masa'ib of Sayyidah Fatimah al-Zahra. And it is when this ummah had the jur'ah, when it had the audacity to attack Sayyidah Zahra and to make Muhsin shaheed. Muhsin became the first child to be sacrificed in the way of the wilayah of Amir al-Mu'mineen. And you find that as Muhsin was shaheed, the precedent was set to kill the children of Ali Muhammad across time. Come to Karbala. You look outside of Karbala, you go to Halab, you find that there is Masjid al-Saqta. Masjid al-Saqta is a masjid on a mountain. It denotes the grave of Sayyid Muhsin. Which Sayyid Muhsin? One of Imam al-Husayn's wives in Karbala was expecting. And as an expectant mother, she was taken as a slave from Karbala to Kufa and Kufa to Sham. On the way to Sham, they made this expectant mother to walk up the mountains, and they whipped her and they beat her to the extent that she had a miscarriage, and Imam Zainul Abidin buried that fetus that he named Muhsin. Imam al-Husayn had named Muhsin. He was buried there. You go outside of Hilla, you have the mazar of Sayyidah Sharifa. Sharifa, the daughter of Imam Hassan al-Mujtaba, a young daughter, the age of not more than 12 or 13, as she was brought prisoner from Karbala to Kufa. On the way, she died because of the way she was beaten and assaulted. She's married in the outskirts. All under the eyes of Sayyidah Zainab al-Kubra. You know, the hardest thing to bear, the most insulting thing to bear is a slap on the face. Allah. And it became a part of the tragedy of Ahlul Bayt that their women would get slapped by the hands of the enemies. From the time Kunfud and from the time Mughira and from the time Ibn Khattab slapped Sayyidah Fatimah al-Zahra. Allah. You know, it narrated yesterday and the day before that when they entered into the house, it says, the hadith says that Ibn Sahak slapped Sayyidat Nisa al-Alameen so hard across the face. He slapped her so hard across the face, the entire eye of Sayyidat Zahra was bruised. And the second time Sayyidat Nisa al-Alameen was slapped, the earring under her hijab got broken. The narrations mention at this time Sayyidah Zainab al-Kubra was standing by the door. She held the hand of her brother Imam Hassan al-Mujtaba and she says, "Oh my brother Hassan, why are they slapping my mother Fatima?" Allah, Allah. The poet says when he listens or when the poet sees this part of the Masaib, he says, "Oh Zainab, get ready." Allah, Zainab, this is for you to see and experience. There are many more slaps to come in your life. Allah, Allah. Like the way Zainab saw the burning door of her mother, Zainab is going to see the burning tents on Sham Ghariban. Allah. Ya Zainab, like the way Sayyidah Zainab al-Kubra saw her mother Fatima slapped. Sayyidah Zainab sees in Karbala when the women are taken as slaves and prisoners. Sayyidah Zainab says, every time we saw the head of Imam al-Hussein on a spear, if we began to cry, Shimmer would come and he would slap our women. They didn't spare. The slap on the face is the most difficult and the most biggest insult a person can bear. These kuffar, not only did they slap the women of Ahlul Bayt, but they even slapped the children of Ahlul Bayt. Allah, Allah. Which is why from the children that were repeatedly slapped was the children from Imam al-Hussein, and in particular his daughter Sakina. Allah, Allah, Sayyidah Ruqayya, when she was slapped by Shimon for crying over Imam al-Hussein. At that time when Sayyidah Zainab saw her in the Khaymaga, when Sayyidah Zainab was running from the burning tents and all the children were running in every direction, Sayyidah Zainab ran behind Sayyidah Sakina. One of the Lu'ana came and they slapped Sayyidah Sakina on the face. The narration says that when the La'in slapped Ruqayya, Zainab was behind. What did Zainab say? Zainab cried out, "Wa Fatima!" As if to remember on the plains of Karbala, the slap on the face of Sakina started with the slap of my mother Fatima. Allah, Allah, Ya Shia, inshallah these tears are sources of shafa'ah in the akhirah. I want to tie tonight Majlis Ikhtitam, the Masaib of Sakina Ruqayya, this young daughter who is now taken care of by Sayyidah Fatimah al-Zahra in Jannah. The narrations mention that when they reached into the dungeon of Sham, one of the nights, Sayyidah Zainab with great difficulty puts all the children to sleep. When the children finally fall asleep in the darkness of the night, this dungeon that doesn't protect you from the cold of the night, it doesn't protect you from the heat of the day. Sayyidah Zainab puts all the children to sleep with great difficulty. She stands up to recite her Salatul Tahajjud. As she is about to do the Takbiratul Ahram, Ruqayya alayha salam, Ruhi al-Fida wakes up and begins to cry in the loudest of voices. Sayyidah Zainab says, she comes over, I sat Sayyidah Sakina on my lap, I put her head on my chest, I kissed her forehead, I said to her, my daughter Sakina, why is it that you cry? You just now you went to sleep. Sakina or Ruqayya, Ruqayya says, oh my auntie Zainab, I saw my father Aba Abdullah in a dream, and he said to me, come to me, oh my daughter Ruqayya, for indeed our separation has been for way too long. She says, oh auntie Zainab, I shall not sleep until I see my father. The child is wailing and weeping. Inshallah, those of you who have gone to Sham, you know where Darbar Yazid is, and you know where the haram of Sayyidah Ruqayya is. That haram was the dungeon. Where is the distance between the dungeon and where is the distance between the Darbar of Yazid? A good 600-700 meters difference. But the narrations tell us that Sayyidah Ruqayya was crying so loudly that Yazid woke up from his sleep. This is how loud she was wailing and weeping. Yazid wakes up, he calls his palace guard. He says, what is all this weeping and crying? The palace guard says to Yazid al-La'in, this young daughter of Hussein, 3-4-year-old daughter, she's woken up in the middle of the night, she's crying because she remembers her father. Yazid al-La'in says, increase the grief of the girl by sending the severed head of her father. If she wants to cry, let her look at the head and cry. Which is why the narrations mention that the prison guard comes with the severed head of Aba Abdullah. It's placed on a tasht and covered with a cloth. It is come and they place the tasht on the next to Sayyidah Ruqayya in the dungeon. Sayyidah Ruqayya thinks the tasht is food. She says, I don't want to eat any food. The guard removes the cover or the cloth from on top of the tasht. Sayyidah Ruqayya sees the severed head of her father. Allah, Allah. The grief in the heart of Ruqayya. Ahibba'i, a fully grown adult, sometimes he cannot see the mayyat of his parents in front of him. Then how did the girl see the severed head of her? How did the girl see the severed head of her father? The narrations mention she took the head of Imam al-Hussein. She kissed the forehead of Aba Abdullah, and then she began to look at the head, holding it up with her little hands. She says, Abata man alladhi khadhaba shaybaka bid-dima. Oh my father, who has colored your beard with blood? And then she looked at the head of Imam al-Hussein a little bit more. She was looking at the eyes of Imam al-Hussein. She was looking at his ears and his beard. And then she saw the neck of Imam al-Hussein. So she looked at it for some time and then she said, Abata man alladhi qatta'a ra'saka min al-warid. Oh my father, who separated your head from the body, from the jugular veins. Sayyidah Ruqayya was crying. She held the head of Imam al-Hussein. She put the forehead of Imam al-Hussein on her forehead. And then she looked and she kissed the cheeks of Imam al-Hussein. And then she said, oh my father, after Karbala, oh my father, look at my back. Let me show you how Shimr whipped me. Oh my father, there are cuts on my back. She says, oh my father, I kiss you on your cheek, but look at my cheek. Shimr slapped me on my... He says, oh my father, look at my feet. They made us walk in the deserts in the middle of the night. Abata, my feet are swollen. Oh my father, my feet are bleeding from the thorns in the desert. Sayyida Ruqayya began to weep and cry. And then she hugged the head of Imam al-Hussein. The weeping of Sayyida Ruqayya became fainter. Allah, Allah, ya Shia. The weeping became fainter and fainter until she stopped crying altogether. There was no movement, no sound from Sayyida Ruqayya. Zayn al-Abidin stands up and says, Inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un. The young girl has left the dunya. I say, Ya Ruqayya,